Montana Territory, July 1877. The sky was turning gold above the Bitterroots when Zane Northwood saw the wagon kicking dust down the canyon trail. He pulled his horse behind a cluster of pine and raised his spyglass. It was a bounty wagon, iron-barred and built solid, the kind used to haul dangerous men. Except the one chained inside was a woman. Zane lowered the glass, jaw set. That ain't right. Beside him, his brother Elias adjusted his rifle. Looks like she's barely standing. What do you reckon she did? Don't care. Ain't no way she makes it another day in that heat. Zane swung up into his saddle. We are taking her. It was not the kind of thing they usually did. Zane and Elias drove cattle up and down the territory, kept their heads low, avoided trouble. But something about the way the girl's shoulders slumped forward, like she had not slept in days, lit a fire in Zane's gut. They waited until the bounty hunter made camp by a creek. He was a big man, wide in the shoulders with a shotgun across his lap and no kindness in his eyes. The girl, young, maybe 22, 23, sat slumped in the cage, wrists bloody from the cuffs. Elias shot the lantern clean off its hook as Zane charged in fast. The hunter dove for cover, returning fire, but Zane was already at the wagon, yanking the back door open. The girl blinked up at him, dazed. Her face was dirty, one eye bruised, but her gaze was sharp. "Can you ride?" Zane asked. She hesitated, then nodded. He snapped the cuffs with Elias's bolt cutters and helped her down. She stumbled once, but her grip on his arm was strong. They rode hard through the trees, not stopping until the moon was high. Only when they reached a hollow out of sight from the trail did they dismount. Zane helped her down gently. She leaned against a tree, breathing heavy. Then she looked straight at him and said, "You should not have done that." "You do not understand," Zane frowned. "What do you mean? I am not the one he was hunting. I am the one being hunted." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. Zane crouched beside her. "Start from the beginning," he said softly. She looked at him, really looked for the first time. Her eyes were green, clear and hard as river glass. "My name is Ziva Thorne. That man was not taking me in for a crime. He was hiding me, because someone worse is looking for me, someone who does not plan to bring me in alive." Zane's stomach tightened. "Who?" Ziva hesitated, then said, "A man named Riker Sloan. He ran with my father's gang years ago. My father died in a Pinkerton raid, but Sloan, he survived, blamed me, thought I sold them out. He has been chasing me ever since." Elias swore under his breath. Ziva pushed hair from her face. "I have been running since I was 17. I thought I could buy my way to Canada with what I had, but Sloan has men everywhere. The bounty hunter took me in to keep me hidden, not out of kindness, but because he was promised $10,000 for my body. Dead, not alive." Zane felt something shift in his chest. She was not weak, she was not broken. She had been surviving for years with death at her heels. "You are safe now," he said. Ziva gave a bitter laugh. "No one has ever been safe from Sloan." "Well," Zane said, standing, "he has not met me." He walked to the horses and threw more wood on the fire. Elias handed Ziva a blanket and looked at his brother. "You thinking what I am thinking?" Elias asked. Zane nodded. "We are not taking her to no fort or sheriff. We are keeping her with us, until Sloan is dealt with." Ziva looked between them. "Why would you do that?" Zane crouched again, met her eyes. "Because I saw you in that wagon and you looked back. You did not flinch. You did not beg. You just waited for your chance. That kind of strength deserves better than chains." Ziva stared at him a long moment. "You do not know what you are getting into." "Maybe not," he said, "but we are already in it." Ziva looked down at the blanket in her lap. Her hands stopped shaking. They rode north the next day, keeping off the main roads. Ziva sat her horse with practiced ease, though her ribs were still sore and her mouth still split. She spoke little, But Zane noticed how she scanned the trees, how she never let her guard drop. She had lived hunted long enough to forget how to rest. That night, Zane sat beside her at the fire. She was quiet, watching the flames. "You have someone waiting for you?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, not for a long time. My mother died when I was young. My father raised me rough. After he was killed, I ran. Been running ever since." Zane nodded. "I lost my wife 5 years ago. Fever took her. No children, just me and Elias now." Ziva looked over at him. "I am sorry," he shrugged. "Life out here does not owe anyone peace." They sat in silence. Then Ziva said, "You should not get close to me." Zane looked at her. "Maybe I already have." She turned her face away, but not before he saw the way her lips parted just slightly. They kept moving. 2 weeks passed. Ziva began to laugh again. Soft things at first, at Elias's bad jokes, at Zane's muttered curses when his horse stepped in a hole. Her bruises faded. Her voice grew stronger. She started helping with the fire, brushing the horses, cooking beans over the flame. One night, Zane brought her a wildflower he had picked at the river. She took it without words but tucked it behind her ear. That night, she brushed her fingers against his when they passed the coffee. He did not pull away. The next morning, Zane found her down by the creek, washing her hands. She turned when she heard him. "I dreamed last night," she said. "It was the first time in a long time. I was not running. I was home, somewhere quiet." Zane stepped closer. "You could have that with me." She blinked, startled. "Zane." "I know it has not been long," he said, "but I know how I feel. I feel it every time I look at you. Every time I see you smile or breathe easier. I want to give you that quiet place." Ziva's eyes filled, but she did not cry. Instead, she stepped forward and laid her hand against his chest. "I want that too," she said. "But not until Sloan is gone." Zane nodded. "Then we finish it together." She leaned into him, her forehead resting against his shoulder. He wrapped his arms around her, careful, steady. For the first time in 6 years, Ziva Thorne felt the weight of fear lift just a little. And Zane Northwood knew, without doubt, that he would kill or die before he let her be taken again. The high trails twisted north through the Blackfoot lands, narrow and overgrown, but Zane kept his horse steady, letting Ziva ride ahead where the brush thinned. She moved with quiet assurance, her eyes tracking the ridgelines like she'd learned long ago to read more than just the ground. Elias rode behind, rifle across his lap, mouth set in a line that hadn't softened since they left the creek. The air was thinner here, pines sweet and still. They saw no one for 2 days. On the third, they came to a burned-out trading post where the roof had caved and the sign hung blackened on one side. Ziva dismounted first, moving through the ash like she knew what to look for. "There was a family here," she said, crouching beside the old porch. 4 people, boots too small for grown men, 2 sets. Zane dismounted and followed her gaze. The prints were faint, barely pressed into the dry earth, but she was right. Children. The thought hollowed something in him. "They left in a hurry," she said. The woman took food from the cellar but dropped half a sack. "Looks like 2 days ago, maybe 3. Elias knelt beside a rusted tin cup near the door. "Sloan," Ziva stood, "or someone else trying to outrun him. They didn't stay." By late afternoon, the trees gave way to low meadows, and Ziva found a narrow game path that led to a shallow stream. They made camp there, building the fire low and cooking over stones. She didn't speak until the sky darkened. "I used to sleep in places like this when I was 16, she said, eyes fixed on the rising stars. "Wrapped up so tight I'd forget how to breathe, listening for footsteps that never came." Zane passed her a strip of dried venison. "What changed?" "I stopped thinking about what might happen," she said. "Started thinking about what I'd do when it did." Elias was already snoring by the time Ziva walked down to the stream. Zane followed, careful not to startle her. She sat on a flat stone, bare feet in the water, hair loose. The moon lit her face in silver. He stood a few steps back, not wanting to break the moment. "You always come this quiet?" she asked without turning. "Only when I don't want to be sent away," he said. She looked back at him, expression unreadable. "I used to pretend I was invisible when I was small. Thought if I could stay quiet long enough, I'd disappear." Zane sat beside her, leaving space between them. "You're not invisible now." "I wasn't sure I'd ever want to be seen again," she said. "But I don't mind it with you." He didn't reach for her. Just sat there while the stream moved around their feet and the night settled into itself. "I've never been in love," she said after a while. "Not truly. I've had men try to own me or save me or use me to get to something else. But never someone who just stayed. I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Not unless you ask me to." She looked at him then, really looked like she was weighing what it meant to believe a thing like that. Then she nodded once, slow. The next morning they rose before the sun. Ziva had already saddled her horse, her coat dusted with dew. She handed Zane a folded scrap of paper. "I found this at the trading post," she said. "Under a loose board, it's a list of names. Mine's at the bottom." Zane opened it. Half a dozen names, all in the same sharp hand. All women's names. Elias read over his shoulder. "He's hunting them," Ziva nodded. "He calls it justice. Sloan thinks anyone tied to my father's crew deserves to vanish." "Why the list?" Zane asked. "Because he doesn't want them loud. Just gone." Zane folded the paper and tucked it into his shirt. "Then we find the others." Ziva blinked. "What? You're not the only one running anymore. If there are others, we warn them." Elias pursed his lips. "That's a wide stretch of land." Zane looked to Ziva. "You said you wanted to stop running." She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "There's a woman named me Elias. She lives near the Judith Basin. She took me in once years ago. Then that's where we go." Zane mounted his horse. "We ride at first light." Ziva didn't speak again until the sun touched the hills. Then she turned to him, eyes steady. "This was never your fight." Zane met her gaze. "It is now." When they rode out, she didn't look back, not once. And for the first time since he'd met her, Zane saw something in her posture that wasn't just survival, it was purpose. They crossed into the Judith Basin under a low sky, the clouds thick with rain that hadn't yet broken. The land rolled wide and green, dotted with cottonwoods and the last rusted skeletons of buffalo pens. They rode single file, Ziva leading, her shoulders squared and eyes ahead. By dusk, they reached the edge of a homestead tucked between two bluffs. The fence was rough-hewn and sagging in places, smoke curling from a stovepipe. Ziva pulled her horse to a halt and sat still a long moment before swinging down. "She won't trust you," she said, brushing dust from her coat. "She doesn't trust anyone." Zane dismounted beside her. "Do you want me to stay back?" "No," she said. "Just don't speak first." The door opened before they reached it. A woman stood framed in the light, rifle balanced across her arm. Her hair was iron gray, pulled into a knot, and her eyes flicked over Zane and Elias before settling on Ziva. "You bring trouble to my door again, girl." Ziva stepped forward. "Yes." The barrel didn't lower. "You alone?" Ziva shook her head. "These men helped me." "Sloan's close." The woman's face didn't change, but she stepped aside. "You've got 10 minutes." Inside, the cabin smelled of smoke and tallow. A kettle hissed on the stove. Ziva spoke quietly with the woman while Zane stood near the door, eyes sweeping the single room. There were no signs of others. No second plate, no boots by the wall. Lived alone. Ziva turned. "She has something." Disappeared behind a curtain and returned with a small oilskin bundle. She set it on the table and opened it with careful fingers. Inside lay a folded map, 3 notches marked in red wax. Sloan's been cutting through the old mining trails, Me said, tapping the marks. These are the places he's left bodies. No law will touch it. Zane stepped closer. Any idea where he's headed now? Me glanced at Ziva. Last word was he's looking for a woman called Corrine. Used to run messages through the Bozeman Trail. She's holed up near the Milk River. Ziva's hand tightened on the edge of the table. She saved me once. I owe her. Me folded the map and pressed it into Ziva's palm. Then you'd better move fast. They left at first light, taking the narrow trail Me pointed them to. The land climbed steadily, brush giving way to stone. A hawk circled overhead, the only thing moving for miles. By midday, Elias spotted a set of tracks, 3 horses, heading northeast, not shod. They're moving light, he said. Could be Sloan's men. Ziva dismounted and knelt beside the prince. One's riding hurt, see how the back hoof drags, broken shoe or bad leg, Zane nodded. We could catch them by nightfall. They rode hard, keeping to the tree line. As the sun dipped, they reached a ridge overlooking a shallow bend in the Milk River. Smoke curled from a lean-to near the bank. A single horse stood hobbled nearby. Ziva held up a hand. That's hers. Zane followed her down, rifle ready but low. The lean-to was rough, patched with old canvas. A woman sat by the fire, long rifle across her knees. She looked up as they approached, and her face lit with wary recognition. I thought you were dead, she said. Ziva crouched beside her. Not yet. Corrine's coat was torn, her cheek scraped. She moved stiffly, favoring her left side. They found me 2 days ago. Sent one man and he never walked out. The rest stayed back. Zane knelt and checked the edge of the camp. They still close, Corrine pointed across the river. Couple 100 yards up. They've got a fire going tonight. Thought I'd be too banged up to move. Ziva looked at Zane. We end it here. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, we draw them in, quiet, one at a time. Corrine smiled faintly. I've got one good arm left, that's enough. They waited until the sky had gone fully dark. No moon. Zane and Elias slipped across the shallows, boots silent on the stone. Corrine stayed behind, rifle propped. Ziva stood watch at the tree line, her knife drawn. The first man came to piss at the edge of the brush. Elias dragged him down without a sound. The second followed, rifle slung loose. Zane stepped from the dark and wrapped an arm around his throat, dragging him back until he stopped thrashing. The third tried to run. Ziva caught him before he cleared the rocks. She didn't hesitate. Her knife moved clean and fast, and when she stood, her breath was steady. By dawn, the fire across the river had gone cold. They buried the bodies in the hills, far from the water. Corrine sat at the edge of the lean-to, watching the wind bend the grass. Ziva stood beside her, hand on her shoulder. I can't run anymore, Corrine said. You won't have to. Ziva turned to Zane as they packed their things. We go north, she said. There's an old mission near the border, they'll take her in. Zane nodded, and after that Ziva looked at him, eyes unreadable. That depends. He stepped closer. On what? On whether you meant what you said by the stream. Zane didn't answer with words. He reached for her hand, calloused fingers closing around hers with quiet certainty. She didn't pull away. Not this time. They rode out together, the wind at their backs. The road ahead long, but finally, theirs. They crossed into the edge of the Mission Valley just after the frost broke. The road north stayed soft under the horses' hooves, and the peaks of the Swan Range loomed white against a pale sky. Corrine rode bundled between Elias and Ziva, her ribs still stiff, but her color returning. The mission sat low among cottonwoods, its chapel rising plain and square above a cluster of stone buildings. A Métis priest met them at the gate, his French thick but kind, and he took Corrine's weight without asking questions. Ziva offered a quiet thanks as the door closed behind them, not looking back. They stayed that night in a hay barn behind the chapel. The air smelled of livestock and clean straw. Zane leaned against a beam, one knee bent, watching Ziva as she rolled her coat into a pillow. "You didn't sleep much the last few nights," he said. "I'll sleep when we stop moving." "We're stopped now." Ziva looked at him. Her face was drawn, the shadows under her eyes deeper than before. "Not for long," she said. "Sloan's not the kind to leave unfinished work." Zane didn't argue. Outside, a wolf howled once, then nothing. He waited until she lay down, then sat beside her, not touching. She closed her eyes, and though her breathing stayed shallow, she didn't flinch when his shoulder brushed hers. At first light, Elias brought news from a trader who'd passed through the valley a day ahead of them. Sloan had been seen 2 towns east, alone this time, asking questions with coin and menace in equal measure. He was moving slower, maybe wounded, maybe careful. Ziva tightened her saddle without a word. Zane stepped close. "We could lay low, ride west. He might never find us." "You believe that?" "No," he said. "But I'd do it if you asked." She looked up at him. "I won't run while there's someone else he's marked, not after Kareen." Elias stood by the gate, watching the path. He didn't speak, but the set of his shoulders said he agreed. They followed the trader's trail east across the flathead, through scrubland and sage. The air was cleaner there, thinner, and the wind never stopped moving. On the 3rd day, they reached a small town called Delancey, nestled in a shallow bend of the river. 2 streets, 1 church, and a saloon with its windows nailed shut from the inside. Ziva dismounted first. Her legs were stiff, but her voice was steady. "If he passed through, someone here remembers." The general store was run by an old woman with cataracts and 2 missing fingers. She didn't blink when Ziva asked about Sloan. Instead, she pointed to the livery stable. "Left his horse there. Spent the night in the back room. Rode out yesterday morning north." Ziva touched the brim of her hat in thanks. The livery boy was lean and sunburned, no older than 15. He stepped back when Zane approached, but answered when Ziva asked, her voice low and sure. "He left a name," the boy said. "Said if a woman came asking, I was to tell her he was heading to the place where it ended." Ziva's jaw tightened. "What else?" "Nothing, just that." "Then he gave me a coin and told me not to lie." She turned away, her mouth set hard. Zane followed. "What does that mean?" "There's a canyon up north," she said. "We called it the Breaks. My father's gang split there. Sloan was shot, left behind. He made it out." "Barely." Elias adjusted his rifle strap. "If he's drawing you there, it's not for a conversation." Ziva nodded. "It's where he wants to finish it." Zane stepped in front of her. "Then we don't let him set the ground." She met his eyes. "I'm not afraid of dying." "I am," he said. "If it means losing you." She didn't look away. They reached the Breaks by dusk the next day. The land dropped in sudden cliffs, carved deep and jagged by wind and flood. Old ash trees leaned against the rock, their roots exposed and twisted. Zane tied the horses behind a ridge. Ziva checked her rifle, then her sidearm. Her fingers were steady, though her face was unreadable. "He won't come close," she said. "Not until he's sure I'm alone." "He'll be wrong," Zane said. She didn't answer. They waited in the shadow of a rock face, the wind whipping dust across their boots. The canyon below stretched wide and empty. Then a shot rang out. Ziva ducked without thinking, instinct sharpened by years. Another shot followed, closer. Then a voice, rough and low, echoed off the stone. "You finally stopped running." Ziva stepped forward, rifle lowered but ready. "You always did love the sound of your own voice." A figure stepped from the gully, broad-shouldered, his coat torn at the sleeve. His left arm hung stiff at his side. "Sloan." "You left me with a bullet in my gut and a noose overhead," he said. "You think I forgot?" "I hoped you would," she said. He raised his gun. Zane fired first. The shot tore through Sloan's shoulder, spinning him halfway before he dropped behind a rock. Another shot cracked from Elias's side. The canyon echoed with it. Ziva didn't wait. She ran low, sliding down the slope, dodging shale. Zane followed, close behind. Sloan fired once more, wild, then silence. They found him bleeding behind a boulder, gun dropped, breath ragged. He looked at Ziva, eyes wide with something that wasn't fear. "You think this brings you peace?" he rasped. "No," she said. "It brings me freedom." Zane raised his rifle, but she stopped him with a hand. Sloan coughed once, then slumped. His chest stilled. They buried him in the canyon, no marker, no words. That night back at camp, Ziva sat beside the fire, legs drawn up, her head resting on her knees. Zane didn't speak. He just waited. After a long while, she said, "I thought I'd feel clean, but I don't." "You don't have to," he said. "You just have to feel done." She looked at him, her eyes tired. "I don't know what to do now." Zane reached for her hand. "Then stay with me. We'll figure it out together." Her fingers curled into his, and for the first time since the wagon, she let her weight lean into his side. Not out of exhaustion, but because she chose to. The wind carried the scent of new grass as they rode south, the breaks shrinking behind them into memory. Ziva didn't look back. She kept her eyes on the horizon, where the land opened wide and the cottonwoods pushed green shoots from winter bones. Zane rode beside her, quiet but near, his presence steady as the sun. They reached a cluster of old cabins near the Musselshell River by the third day. The property had once belonged to a retired cavalryman, long past. The place stood quiet, half overgrown, but the roof held firm, and the well still gave water. Elias stepped inside one of the cabins, glanced around, and gave a nod. Ziva stood in the doorway of the main house, her fingers tracing a notch in the frame. "No one's lived here in years," she said. Zane set down his saddlebag on the porch. "Then maybe it's time someone did." That night they slept with walls around them for the first time in weeks. The fire cracked in the hearth, its light throwing long shadows across the floor. Ziva sat cross-legged near the stone, combing through a bundle of old maps she'd tucked into her coat. "I used to draw lines through places like this," she said. "Places I thought I'd never see. I'd lie awake, naming rivers I'd never cross." Zane lowered himself beside her, careful not to disturb the maps. "And now," she leaned back on her hands, the firelight soft against her face. "Now I want to stay still long enough to hear the seasons change." Zane reached for her hand, let their fingers rest together on the floorboards. "We could make this a place worth staying for." "I don't know how to build a life," she said, her voice quieter than before. He turned his head toward her. "You already started, when you saved Kareen, when you chose to stop running." She didn't reply right away, but her thumb moved slowly across his knuckle, like she was learning the shape of quiet again. In the days that followed, they worked the land with slow patience. Elias repaired the barn roof with scavenged planks while Zane fenced off a stretch of pasture. Ziva cleared the garden bed behind the house, her sleeves rolled to the elbow, fingernails caked with soil. She planted onions, beans, and a row of wildflowers she'd found near the riverbank. One afternoon, Ziva found Zane sitting beneath the cottonwood that shaded the back porch, a piece of whittled cedar in his hand. "How did you know this would suit me?" she asked, tugging off her gloves. "I didn't," he said, "but I hoped it would." She sat beside him, brushing wood curls from his lap. "I never pictured myself with a porch or a garden. Or a man who waited. I never pictured myself with a woman who knew how to fight like hell and still wanted peace," he said, setting the carving aside. She looked out across the field, where the golden grass danced in the breeze. "I think I could grow old here." Zane turned to her. "Then let's build something worth growing into." She leaned in, lips brushing his, and the world quieted around them. There was no rush, no need, just two people who had come through fire and found shelter in each other. Summer settled in slow, thick with the hum of bays and the scent of tilled earth. Kareen sent a letter from the mission, written in careful script by the priest's hand. She was safe, healing, helping with the garden there. She asked nothing of them, only offered her thanks and hopes for calm days ahead. Elias left by the first frost, heading south with a rancher's drive. He promised to return come spring, saddlebags full of supplies and stories from the lower plains. Zane clasped his brother's hand by the gate, the two men trading a look that needed no words. After he rode out, Ziva stood on the porch, arms folded, watching dust rise from the trail. "You'll miss him," she said. "I will," Zane replied. "But not enough to leave what I've found here." Winter came early that year, snow dusting the fields by October. Zane and Ziva moved their bedrolls into the back room, sealing the windows tight. They cooked on the hearth, read by lantern, and spoke in the hush of firelight. One evening, Ziva brought out a small tin box she'd kept hidden beneath the floorboards. "I buried this when I was 16, she said. "Carried it from place to place, never opened it." Inside was a faded photograph her mother, holding a baby in her arms, both eyes turned toward something just beyond the frame. Ziva traced the edge of the paper. "I think she'd want me to have this place. This life." Zane brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "And what do you want?" She looked up, eyes clear. "You, this home, enough time to grow roots." He pulled her close. "Then that's what we'll have." The seasons turned. The snow melted. The onions sprouted. They added a milk cow, a pair of hens. Ziva learned to mend shirts with even stitches, and Zane built her a writing desk by the window. She used it often, mostly for quiet thoughts. In the evenings they sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the cottonwoods. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they didn't. But always their hands found each other, fingers laced without needing to ask. And when spring came, the wildflowers she'd planted bloomed in a soft, defiant row, red, gold, and violet, growing strong from the hard earth. They never left that place. Because peace, when fought for and earned, settles deep. And love born slow, steadied by hardship, never forgets how to stay.